Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a film channel where I either do deep dive reviews or I interview guests who work in the arts, or it's a combination of the two. If this is your first time on my channel, please consider subscribing. Right beside the description box below, you will see the subscribe button. Click on that and then click the bell so you'll get a notification every time I go live, like I am today, or when I release a new video. Today, we're going to be discussing two films by the master of suspense, Alfred Hitchcock, The Man Who Knew Too Much, the original from 1934, which stars Peter Lorre, and The Wrong Man from 1956, which stars Vera Miles and Henry Fonda. And my guest today is Joel Gunz, and he is known as the Alfred Hitchcock Geek, which is such a great thing to be known for. He's an independent scholar. He's written many articles, essays, and chapters on Alfred Hitchcock. He's the editor and publisher for the HitchGeek Magazine, and he made 3 Hitchcock-themed documentary series: How to Watch Hitchcock, Freak the Geek, Alfred Hitchcock, Master of the Surreal, and his website joelgunz.com is in the description box below if you want to read more about Joel and see his docuseries and stuff like that. So Joel, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Great topic you chose.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask, because I just, reading on your website, this endless fascination for Hitchcock. Why do you think Hitchcock's been so fascinating for you since you were a kid?
Well, it started when I was about 12 years old, and I was raised in a pretty conservative Christian household, so I wasn't allowed to listen to or watch too much dark entertainment. But when you're 12 years old, that's where your mind goes. And somehow Hitchcock slipped under the radar with my family, and in fact, they encouraged me to watch his films. My stepdad told me that he mentioned that Hitch had a way of manipulating and controlling audience emotions just by the way he was able to edit his films and control the pacing, and that just absolutely captured my imagination. So the first Hitchcock product I actually saw was an interview with him, and he broke down his filming techniques using examples from his films. And so 2 things happened with that. One, I was just immediately a geek and a gearhead for the technique of filmmaking. And then secondly, the climactic scenes of his most famous films were absolutely spoiled for me before I even saw them.
That could happen, right? Because there's so much out there to read, that, like, just behind me, the Hitchcock Truffaut book, of course, Francois Truffaut interviewed him in the early 60s, and there's just endless books. Why do you think he holds up so much these days?
Let me show you my library. Can I do?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
So, and while I'm at it, I'll shut this door. So this is my Hitchcock library. These are all the books that I own.
Oh my God. That whole shelf, the whole book shelf right there is all Hitchcock. Wow. Oh my God.
And by the way, Bob Gottlieb, the editor, is going to be at HitchCon. These are all making of books. These are the encyclopedias, books about single movies. And then, these are all the themed essay books. And then that's some more general film history and stuff.
Wow.
But, and this is not even like, half of what's out there. I just try to stay up as much as I can.
That I find that so incredible that this filmmaker to this day, 41 years after he died, he's still written about endlessly. Why do you think that is? What is it about Hitchcock that people, keep writing about?
Well, there are a couple of things. One is he's a fantastic filmmaker. He made 54 films over about 50 some years. And so there's just a lot to, consider. He started at the infancy of film. It was silent film. And then he continued all the way through the advent of sound, the advent of color, the rise and the fall of the Hollywood studio system, and until his last film in 1976, the industry had just changed, and so
right.
he adapted with it, and with it he was innovating all all the way. And, and so great storyteller, some kind of an innovation or contribution to how film is made in just about every movie. And so it's that combination, I think, of just technical know-how and being at the forefront of technique. That Hitchcock Truffaut book is basically, that's the cookbook for how to make a movie.
Right.
And, but at the same time, he knew his philosophy, and he knew his history, and he read his literature. And so he was bringing all kinds of, juice into the films. And so I think a couple of things happens. One is there's just a lot that's packed in there. He really lays it on thick and makes it go down so easy, and that's no small trick. And but then what happens is, as time goes by, we revisit his films and new perspectives emerge. And I think this is something that happens with art that's truly capital A art, great art. That it's because it's universal, it's also immortal, and so that's why we can say the same thing. People are still studying, Leonardo da Vinci's paintings, or they're still studying Shakespeare.
Right.
And there's a whole library of Shakespeare out there that I haven't even touched, and that's why I think people like that don't call them along every day, that kind of genius, but. That's kind of, and it's cast a shadow over my life, I have to say. As a young filmmaker, I felt that I had pretty large shoes to fill, and
right.
I can be kind of a mind screw, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, one thing you said that is so true is that it does make it look so easy. And as I'm sure when they asked Truffaut, after the 400 Blows came out, who his favorite American filmmaker is, and people were shocked that he said Hitchcock, because they were like, that would be like some, young artsy director saying Michael Bay. I mean, from their point of view, not that that's the truth, thinking, oh, he's just some guy who makes suspense stories. And really, it was as people know, the French that started to really see the craftsmanship and the work that went into these to make them so captivating and creative and artistic. So today, for those of you watching, someone in the chat box is saying hello from Leadenstone, DC. DC is their name. Hello, DC. And for those of you watching, feel free to leave a comment or ask any questions as we move along. So I would love to, let's just dive right into our first film today, The Man Who Knew Too Much, 1934, with Peter Lorre. How do you feel about this film?
It's awesome. It's fantastic. It kind of saved Hitch's career. Up until then, he had some hits, but he was kind of had an uneven track record. And he was still kind of casting around for his style. So he'd done thrillers like The Lodger and Blackmail, but then he'd also done musicals, and he was done light comedy and all other kinds of things. And he hadn't quite found his voice. And then he teamed up with Charles Bennett, who'd been a longtime writing partner, and Ivor Montague, who also had been a longtime friend. And these guys were, they were pretty punk rock back in the day. And this was really his first, really solid spy film that he made. And this is the one that kind of like cast the die, you could say. So he did this. Right after this was 39 Steps, and then Secret Agent. What am I forgetting? Lady Vanishes.
Yeah.
Sabotage. So this is really the film that kind of established him as a maker of spy films, for sure. And so you can see the DNA of, Torn Curtain and North by Northwest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that for sure. I mean, you can't help but watch some of these early British films of his and see so many common elements that he would do in his other espionage or spy films. One thing that really comes to mind is this opening a film where it doesn't seem like anything bad will happen. The music is happy. They're watching people skiing, and you think it almost looks like it's going to be a family film or a romance. And he often would start his movies that way, and then something is just off, and it's, of course, for me, it's when Peter Lorre sees the guy they end up killing in the next scene, who was the agent who was after them. Just a look they give each other, and then it goes on from there, and nothing is said, and something is just a little off, until boom, that murder happens. And again, the murders were always in places that we can all find ourselves in. I love this sense of irony and contrast. He always had murders take place not in an alleyway, or in dark at night. It was in a park, like in Strangers on a Train. It was in, in this case, it was in a dance hall, and in Rope, in an apartment with where guests are attending, he did that in so many films, and I think this really was the first time he started to do that. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Well, The Lodger has that same opening kind of, like on the street, places we can find ourselves in.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, like, especially the humor of it, maybe just about for listeners or viewers who haven't seen it. So it's a spy caper, and it's about a family on holiday in San Moritz, Switzerland. And they love to ski. They love to skeet shoot as well. And they have an unfortunate encounter with a bad guy, Peter Lorre. And then a friend of theirs, while they're on this holiday at this luxury resort, during a ballroom scene, which is what you're describing, and it's, without going into detail, there's a lot of comic effect happening at the same time. But people are happily dancing, and suddenly an assassin fires a shot through a window, kills him, and he apologizes for dying. And then we're off and running. Child gets kidnapped, and now they've got to save their kidnapped child while keeping society free from all the bad guys.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's that the irony of it's a film that's just like layered upon layers upon layers of irony. So in this ballroom scene, or this dancing scene, they're dancing to a jazz band. The couples are out on the floor twirling around, and one of the fellows has got a button on his jacket hooked on a sweater that is being knitted. And as he's dancing around, the sweater is unraveling, and people are giggling in the movie as they see this happening. It's a funny scene, and then he's shot. And this is one of those things that Hitchcock does that is really interesting, that he pulls you along as if on a string. You're giggling and laughing along, and then he just wipes that smile off your face.
Actually, I didn't even realize that. That's true, yeah. That's what the string was. He was using it as a metaphor, right? I'm pulling you along until boom. Yeah.
And then in hindsight, the unraveling of that sweater could be seen as foreshadowing, the unraveling, the bleeding out of his life, right?
Yeah. Oh, the guys are good. Yeah. I mean, he was all about metaphors, right? I mean, he had, whether it was the stuffed birds and on Psycho, or like just those simple ways for the audience to understand what was going on psychologically with the characters. But there certainly this one thing that I really like is that he always had people that the main characters were often people that anyone could identify with. They were often, ordinary or, middle class. They have, ordinary jobs but then at the same time, they're extremely resourceful. I mean, this character, they get that code, the code to kill the ambassador, and they just start with some clues, and they go from there, and in order to solve to find these killers that kidnapped their daughter. And you see that in so many of his films. 39 Steps, you see that in North by Northwest, and he doesn't let you hang out with the characters for too long so that the audience won't doubt that these people can really do that, because you know so little about them that they can. There's no time to even question whether you haven't spent enough time for them. The plot, it just moves, and again, playing with the humor and the absurdity, the absurd nature of when they go into the dentist's office, and when the bad guys are coming up, and very quickly switching the jackets with the dentist that's unconscious, and making it seem that like I just love that he had these people that anyone could be, being able to go on these adventures and these obstacles, and you never really take the stories too seriously, but because he really cuts to the heart of the essence of what's going on, like emotionally, that they're basically trying to save the daughter, and that's what is hitting you. I think that's ultimately what grabs you. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a funny relationship that they have with their little girl, because beginning of the movie, it's Nova Pilbeam, and she was going to appear 3 years later in Young and Innocent, and but in this one, she's just a little girl, and they're not too happy to have her. They're a couple they're young. They apparently have independent means, and they can run around and go have fun, but then they ended up saddled with child, and so her nickname is Trouble. In that opening scene, they call her Fathead. They tell her to shut up, go to bed. They tell her to buzz off. They call her a brat. They're very cruel to her. You just can't talk to your kids like that anymore, unfortunately. Right. So they and then she ends up getting kidnapped, and that's a strike in the face, right, to them. And so I think that the personal side of the story is that they've been very unloving toward her, and it's almost as if they don't deserve her in a way, because she's an adorable little girl. So they have to fight and earn back their right to have her. And so I think that's really, really moving. And by the way, Hitch and Alma, they had a little girl who was just a couple years younger. So, a story like this, had to have been very personal for them, as they went through the process of writing and feeling through it. And so in the beginning of the movie, the mom, she's skeet shooting. And then a little bell goes off, and it throws her off, and she misses the shot, and she blames the little girl, and it's not her fault. And then at the end of the movie, the kidnappers are up on the roof, and the kidnapper is pursuing the little girl to use her as a human shield. And the mom has access to a gun, and this time there's no bell to go off, and she makes the shot. Yeah. And that's a redemption, you could say.
Well, I love that, because he's not just doing something, for no reason. Like the reason the audience may not know what the point of seeing her as a shooter off the top is, and then at the end you are like, so that's why he showed that, so that the audience would believe that she could make that shot and kill one of the kidnappers. There's also that the element of when it's kind of a creepy shot when the daughter is kidnapped, and he zooms out from the pin on her coat. And the first time I saw it, I was, why did he do that? But then of course later, when, as when the mother goes to the Royal Albert Hall, and one of the kidnappers shows up and gives her the pin to say, I'm the one who has your daughter, and it's just it's so clever how he put those details in there to pay off later. So then oh, that's, I just think, he was just such a clever guy. I mean, I wonder sometimes, because, so many people have done either whether it's a thriller or a suspense film, you see Brian De Palma sort of tried to carry on this language almost like it's a genre within itself. I wonder if anyone has really been able to have that tongue-in-cheek, sense of the absurd and the sense of irony that he was able to really pull off. I mean, do you think that's something that perhaps really kind of holds these films up?
I think that's what separates a Hitchcock film from all its imitators.
Right.
Because you do have De Palma and others who they're able to grab some elements, but he does it with such humor and grace, and all these other imitators, they just, not to knock them or anything, but I think that's the flourish that's missing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
The Scorsese did a 15-minute commercial, long-form commercial for Freshenet sparkling wine a few years ago. Have you seen this?
Was this where he found that script that Hitchcock was going to do, and he did like 10 minutes of it, right? I think.
Yeah.
I did see that.
That was, and it's a parody, of course. I hope it's still up on YouTube. It's been so long.
I think it is. Yeah.
But encourage viewers to go watch it, because Scorsese nails the Hitchcock touch, the vibe, because he's Martin fucking Scorsese.
Yeah.
Right?
Only he can.
And only he can. Only he gets to do it.
Yeah.
It's, some of the films that people mistake for Hitchcock, which aren't, like Charade, directed by Stanley.
Oh, yeah.
And Wait Until Dark, which I just rewatched a couple nights ago.
Yeah, that's a really good one as well. Yeah.
And people think they're Hitchcock, but they don't have the thing,
Yeah. It's for me, it's often the sense of playing with irony and playing with contrast. I mean, another example is it's both an absurd and an hilarious scene when the husband is with the kidnappers in the church and starts to throw chairs at them. And they're throwing them back at him. And, and then the other guy's hypnotized, and you just think, how did he get away with this, Hitchcock?
What is this?
It's so crazy, but he obviously had a lot of faith in the medium and in just knowing, well, the heart of this is that he's trying to get the daughter back. So, it's okay if the audience is laughing or not taking parts of the story so seriously, because, as you said off the top, he knew how to manipulate the audience with his editing. And another example, how often he used POV, the POV shot, a little less in this film than the next one we're going to be talking about, The Wrong Man. But I love that moment where the mother is at the Royal Albert Hall and she starts to tear up, and it's the POV of her, and it's just very blurry and watery. Yeah, and then it dissolves to the gun of the shooter about to kill the ambassador, and it's just I mean, talk about an innovation. I mean, I don't know if anyone had. I mean, I know he learned a lot from both the Americans and the Germans with using those kind of techniques. But I mean, certainly, nowadays people are talking mostly about him doing these kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely wasn't alone, but he was, I'd say, leading the way. And that Royal Albert Hall scene is interesting because, yes, that one dissolve shot is fascinating. In fact, that whole setup causes me to question a couple of things. Like, she knows why she's at the Albert Hall. She knows what's going on, but she doesn't know exactly what's going on. And in a real life situation, to walk into a crowded room filled with hundreds of people and immediately be able to put two and two together about what's going on, to me, it's a stretch, but it
is a bit, yeah.
But it's saved by that dissolve, because this is my own interpretation of it, but I feel that an intuition was, you could say, taking over for her that transcended the the sort of material, logical putting together of details to form a picture. It's almost a metaphysical moment, you could say.
Yeah, that was something that popped up to me. I just thought, but I like I said, his films, they move so fast, and as you just said, that the shot, the dissolving shot, is just telling the audience she saw it as she's looking around, seeing the curtains move a little bit.
That scene was not shot at the Royal Albert Hall.
Was not shot there.
It's all. So he
fooled me.
To take pictures of the interiors, and then they painted in the audience, and no extras really. They're all painted in, except for like some of the close-ups.
Yeah, the ones right beside her.
Yeah, and then he just really good editing, storyboarding, and then he used what was called the Schuftan process. So they took these images and then scraped holes into the images that would frame her in the scene, and they shot her through through that hole, so you'd see the picture. And
I didn't even know that.
And so that is incredible, and it's such a tour de force. Just watching it, I just watched that last night, I guess, prepping for this. And I've seen it a few times, and it's still just like moving. This is where she has to choose between loyalty to her daughter, loyalty to her country, her moral universe going to be shaped like going forward. And, it just got me.
Yeah.
And, and then to see that the whole thing was an artificial production, you could say, I just think that's a master stroke,
Yeah, no, he certainly fooled me. I didn't know that. I thought they were just on location and were filming that. Do you think, I should also mention that Joel has set up a Hitchcock Conference that's going to be on October 1st till the 3rd in Cape Con. What was that? Sorry.
We'll be speaking.
Yeah, I'll be one of the Hitch Geeks talking at the conference. But the conference is correct me if I'm wrong, but everybody is going to be having a presentation about how love is a motivating factor in Hitchcock's movies. So do you think in this film it's really just getting the daughter back? Do you think that is ultimately where love falls into this film?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. One is, the husband and wife are, at the beginning of the film, you just wonder even how faithful they are to each other. They're joking about their she's running off with him, and it's sort of like a joke, but how funny is it? Like, what's really going on here? Is she getting a little something on the side? And then they're sort of they're setting up their daughter to spend a lot of time on a therapist's couch.
Right.
And, so they've got to work out their issues and decide, is you is or is you ain't my baby, that's for them. And, I think by the end of the movie, they do that. And maybe to even compare that to the 1956 remake, it even goes deeper. And in that one, the title, the original film, The Man Who Knew Too Much was the dad who knew too much about the political situation and knew that he couldn't, act in a way that would harm his daughter. It was just about politics. The second one, they changed his profession, and Ben McKenna, played by James Stewart, is a doctor. And he's a know-it-all. He's got what I call the M-deity complex, doctors who think they know everything because they know medicine. And so he's kind of an arrogant asshole through the film, and in that sense, he knows too much, as well as knowing too much about the intrigue. And so in that film, he has to learn a little bit of humility, and so Jo, his wife, is played by Doris Day, is a singer, and he has talked her out of her singing career so that she can be a wife and mother, instead of finding some kind of a balance or compromise. And so she's repressed, and because he knows too much, he's been repressing her. But throughout the film, what she does is she learns her voice will not be repressed. It will not be held down. And so she screams at the Royal Albert Hall. That's her debut.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then at the end of the film, she sings Que Sera Sera, which again sort of cyclically connects her to her son, and in some convoluted way, that saves the day. But the point is that he has to let go and let her sing and be herself. A little humility if they're going to save their marriage. So,
it's been a while since I've seen the remake. I have to see it again. Which do you prefer, the 34 one or the one with Jimmy Stewart and Doris Day?
It's the latter. The later one is definitely, as Hitch himself said, it's much more richer and more polished, more professional. But I kind of like it's got a punk rock vibe in the 1934 version. It's like it's really kind of edgy and jumpy, and the cuts, they just come at you so fast, and you don't have to keep up almost. He's one step ahead of you. I almost wish, like in some of the opening,
it's very quick. Yeah.
But at the same time, I kind of like that kind of the rush that the film gives you. It's kind of a speed metal kind of a feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to see the remake again. It's been quite a while since I've seen it. Just in the chat box, hope I'm saying your name right. Hennek says Peter Lorre underwent English lessons for this kind of movie. Yeah, I read that, but he actually didn't. He was just learned it phonetically, right? He didn't speak a word of English, I don't think.
I don't know. Maybe earlier on, but I think later he did.
Yeah, I'd have to look that up again, because I believe he had just gotten there not too long. He hadn't been there for very long since he had moved there from Germany, so he just had to memorize the English and know what he was saying. But he fooled me. I mean, it doesn't seem unnatural. Like, I mean, he really got the humor of that character. Like, even when he's he's shooting. When they're shooting out the window, he's smoking a cigarette. I just,
he didn't have a lot of lines.
Well, that's true as well. Yeah.
It's not like he was giving, Shakespearean monologues or anything. His acting, all the business with his cigarette and his eyes, and he created the mold, that everybody else tried to imitate.
Yeah.
He was actually thinking, watching Wait Until Dark, Alan Arkin plays the bad guy with the dark glasses, and he's like, he's been watching some Peter Lorre.
That never dawned on me. Yeah, there must have been some an inspiration there. Yeah, no, he was very unique. I still haven't even seen M, that noir Fritz Lang. I still have to see that.
Hang up right now. Go see it.
All right, tonight I'm gonna see that. I had another guest on recently talking about Marlon Brando's One-Eyed Jacks. He wrote a book about it, and The Searchers came up, and that's another Western classic. It's just one of those ones I haven't seen, and he reacted the same way. Here's one of my Patreon members, George W. Starts, is saying, one little known fact is that Peter Lorre's daughter was almost a victim of the Charles Manson gang. Oh, I didn't know that. Is that something you knew, Joel?
Didn't hear that one.
Wow, I did not know that. No, I didn't. And then DC is now saying Gainsborough Studios on the canal in Islington got demolished 10 years ago and is now a block of flats. Mr. Hitchcock House also got demolished and is now a car wash. Typical Waltham Forest Council. I didn't know that either. Did you know his house is knocked off?
Yeah, knew that's a station. Is that Rebecca? I have a feeling that might be Rebecca Asgard.
It just says D and then C, but it could be. Is that if DC? If you're Rebecca, let us know.
So we got a Leytonstone native. That's where Hitchcock was born.
Yeah,
and she's a Leytonstone native. And just shout out to her because she's the executive director of Friends of Alfred in that area, and they're putting together programs to promote him in the area. So one of the things they've got in mind is to put a plaque, if not a statue,
Oh, wow,
on his birthplace, at the gas station. And yeah, I hope that works out.
Yeah, let us know if you are. And another question was from DC. Any leads on the Mountain Eagle? I don't know what that is. That something? Maybe that's something for you, Joel.
Yeah, that was his. I think it was his second film, and it's Lost. It's the Lost Hitchcock film, and so there are a few stills from the movie floating around the internet, and but it's kind of like the holy grail of Lost movies.
I didn't even know that. Was this after? What was the first one called? He did. Oh God, something Garden. Was it? It's
yeah.
Yeah. So this is the one after that.
Yeah, I believe it's the second film, number 2. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that. A Lost Hitch film. Wow.
Yeah.
No, DC says he is not Rebecca. He said they have a small blue plaque on the garage, apparently. Oh, okay. Well, good to know. I did not know that. There you go. Yeah. Great. Well, any final thoughts on The Man Who Knew Too Much, Joel?
No, I think, there are a lot of really crummy versions out there and they're painful to watch, but
yeah.
If you have a Criterion channel, subscription, or you don't, get one, because that's got the best version. It's nice, crisp and clean, and it makes all the difference.
Yeah. The Criterion version is definitely the best one. To see the restoration, but yeah, no, it's a quick. It's only like an hour and 17 minutes. It's a really quick watch, and just to see the early Hitchcock on using a lot of elements in this film that you would certainly see in a number of his films later. So from here, I'd love to jump into the Wrong Man, the 1956. This is Henry Fonda and Vera Miles. How do you like this one, Joel?
I love it. Well, okay, so it's a very austere film to watch. It's to me, it's kind of hard work to watch. You kind of have to sit up and really pay attention to it, because the pacing is a little bit slower. It doesn't have the witty, charming, sexy dialogue and sexy players in it. It's a pretty gritty, earthy movie. I would compare it to any Burgundian wine lovers out there, an earthy Vosne Romanée as opposed to an Oregon Pinot. Anybody? No. Okay. So
someone will, I'm sure. So
well, you kind of have to tune into it and get into that wavelength, and but then once you do, it's it's a chamber piece. It's real. It's music. Music on film.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if you want to recap it or I can recap the plot. But
yeah, no, go ahead. You're better at it than I am. You go ahead. Go ahead.
That's the okay. So maybe even to back up a little bit. So one of the primary tropes of a Hitchcock film is as a man who's been wrongly accused of a crime and has to go on a journey in order to clear his name. And that's like half of the Hitchcock films. That's it right there, like North by Northwest. And but this one is about a guy who Manny Balistrero, who plays. He's a jazz bass player at the Stork Club, and he gets accused of robbing some local bodegas and corner markets. And it's a case of mistaken identity, and so he spends the movie trying to clear his name. And along the way, his wife, the beautiful Vera Miles, is tortured by this and loses her marbles. And so it's just kind of a dour, it's kind of a downbeat film, but it's essential Hitchcock.
Yeah.
One of the primary themes, and people have talked about this a lot, is that the idea. Catholic was raised Hitchcock. He went to Jesuit schools, and so he had a very strict Catholic upbringing. And the Henry Fonda character, Manny, even his name suggests that he's a Christ figure, Jesus, the Son of Man, right?
Oh, right.
And so by carrying, by being falsely accused, it's as if, just as Jesus, carries the sins of mankind, right? And but it kind of turns its head on that, because the story of Jesus is supposed to be one of salvation, and it has a happy ending. This one, doesn't really. And so it kind of questions a lot of those assumptions, I believe, that we make about our beliefs, and how we believe what we believe, and why we believe what we believe.
What's so interesting about this film is that it was, it's, for anyone who doesn't know, it's based on a true story. And apparently, I don't think he took any very, very little licenses. I mean, it was literally exactly as he shot it, is very much exactly as it happened. I mean, was there anything he dramatized? Not much, I don't think.
Not much. Years later, the Ballesteros family came out and said, Manny wasn't that great of a guy.
Oh, so within the character, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think he might have exaggerated a few things, but it hews pretty closely to the story for sure.
This has always been one of my favorite Hitchcock films, and I was rereading the chapter from Hitchcock Truffaut, and as I'm sure Joel, he felt that making the style, like, stylized in the way Hitchcock often made his films, was not right for this story, because it was so literally really happened. It was incredibly, it should have been look like a documentary, like a someone lesser skilled perhaps. But I don't really agree with Truffaut. I actually think he found a balance of, sort of like a film noir, dark shadows, has a documentary feel, but then at the same time, he's still using, POV, particularly when he gets arrested. He's in the car, in the back seat, and then it's the POV is him looking to his left, seeing the cigar out of the cop's mouth, and then looking at the other guy, looking at his shoes, and then looking out the window, and everything outside is normal. Kids are playing, people are going about their business. And in that 1 second, this guy's whole life has totally changed. Again, he's playing with irony there, but with no humor, of course.
Yeah.
So, and of course, in the jail. I mean, I love that. The POV of what he's looking at, the corner, the cell, the bars, and then of course as the camera goes on his face and spins around and around, as if he's, his life is spiraling out of control. I thought it's an extraordinary sequence. I mean, what do you think, Joel? Do you think you think Truffaut was anything he said valid there?
No, I think, I think it was it was a kitchen sink drama, right? So that was kind of an emerging genre at the time.
Yeah, it has that feel. Yeah,
and so it's interesting because there aren't very many special effects in the film. Excuse me. So you really feel like you're right there in it, and that this could, and by sharing the POV with Henry Fonda, that breaks, the documentary rules.
Yeah, because it's not objective. It's totally from his point of view.
Yeah, and yet it's it's essential. So I think people throw these labels around, and I don't think Hitch ever really subscribed to those labels, and it's kind of like why his movies are unique. Like, people list their favorite film noir directors, and if you ever talk to a film noir geek, they will insist that Hitchcock was never noir because he didn't adhere to XYZ.
I've had a lot of those fights.
Right? They're dead ends. They're boring to me. Like,
yeah,
who cares? Let's just dispense with the labels and the isms and just get to make some art. So that's what it's interesting that the wrong man kind of straddles noir, straddles kitchen sink, straddles documentary, and without slipping and falling on its face.
Well, exactly, and very much in a Hitchcock way, because I think his style sort of met all the other ones that you mentioned in the middle, and I think it's an extraordinary film, and it's almost his scariest film because it doesn't have, he doesn't have that break to laugh. He doesn't have the adventures or the absurdities or the surrealist natures. It's so scary because even if you don't know it's a true story, he's depicting it as totally really happening. And this guy, the evidence is stacked up against him. He's got the witnesses in the bank. Again, another great use of POV when the bank, as the bank tellers are, is that the guy? Is that him? And then they cut to the women POV looking at Henry Fonda as he's waiting for the teller. But and then of course later on, I mean, what a brilliant shot where he's praying and looking at the picture of Jesus, and then it dissolves into the face of the real robber, who has a striking resemblance. I mean, I just thought that was so cool.
Here's how I feel about that. So that moment that's another kind of a metaphysical moment, just like the dissolve, in
Man Too Much,
and it's. But if we break it down, it's, the idea is that he is at the end of his rope. He's finally brought to his knees and he's praying before this image of Jesus. And so we're led to believe that, he's getting his prayer answered. Right.
Right.
So what struck me about the actual bad guy was that I don't see the resemblance that much. He looks a lot more like Boris Karloff than Henry Fonda.
Yeah, that's true.
And
that's true.
And he's also just got a hard look that Henry Fonda couldn't.
Yeah, that's true.
He was an amazing actor, but he could not play a bad guy.
Yeah, unless it was Once Upon a Time in the West.
And so the kind of the feeling that I get from this is that, it's a case of mistaken identity. And not only these people are wrong, but they're really wrong. Like they really picked the wrong guy in the police lineup. They really, fingered the wrong guy. And so to me, that speaks to, that's a nihilistic position. Like, in other words, what it's saying is that, the universe giveth and the universe taketh away. And if we are going to attribute any kind of divine intervention to the prayer scene, is that actually a divine intervention, or is that just yet another coincidence, piled up on top of coincidences? At this point, you could almost take a more of a kind of a magical view of things and say, oh, he's caught in a really nasty synchronicity loop spiral, And of course, in Hitchcock's world, God and Hitchcock are interchangeable titles. the auteur.
Oh yeah, the guy. Yeah, he's writing the rules, right? He's the director.
And so the in a sense, it's almost a self-indictment of him as a director, humanizing one of his characters, sort of bringing a character to life, to imminent life, and then putting him through this shit, and then saying, okay, well, I guess I'm done with you now. I'm gonna give you redemption, and I'm gonna tack on a happy ending to this film.
Yeah.
So it could be read as a very very nihilistic film, which I think is interesting, especially it precedes Vertigo, which also has some deep nihilism in it as well.
Yeah, and because he often would have, not always, but he would often have, a happy ending. But here it's quite sad. I mean, it's really what happens to Vera Miles that, I mean, and particularly the first scene with the lawyer, she's really with the husband, she's defending him, and then the next scene totally apathetic, and because she's losing it and gets violent, and the stress of your husband going to jail, and in the end, it's like anything else, like nothing is just, oh well, it was an ordeal, but it's over. It's kind of like the current pandemic. I mean, these things have lasting effects. It's not going to just clear up and everything's okay. I mean, these people went through hell, and those effects are lasting. And now she's in a she has, now they have a whole other set of problems, which is really heartbreaking. I should also, this is an opportunity again to mention the Hitchcock Conference, hitchcon.org. You can find the details, the link. I'll put the link for that in the description box as well, which is going to be a 3-day conference that Joel is hosting, where each presentation, I'll be one of the presenters. It will explore where love was a motivating factor, or what the characters are pursuing or exploring in all of Hitchcock's films. Do you see love in this film as a motivator or as a big factor?
Well, it's a heartbroken love for sure.
Yeah.
And she leaves him. She leaves him emotionally. Vera Miles leaves Manny, Rose leaves Manny emotionally. All that's left is just to do the paperwork, and so, like, they're in a culture and they're in an era where they're not going to get a divorce. They're going to stay together because that's what you did back then.
Right.
But if they're really going to, put their lives back together again, they're going to need help, counseling, or whatever they would go see. Maybe their priest.
Yeah.
But, so, they were torn apart by forces bigger than they were, and it's going to take forces bigger than they are to, put it all back together again. That's how I see it, anyway.
I really love the moment when Henry Fonda sees the robber, and he says to him, "Do you know what you put my wife through?"
Yeah.
And that's where, for me, he's not thinking about himself. He's not thinking about what he went through. He's not thinking about the damages that perhaps his children or his extended family and everyone. He's thinking purely about his wife and what happened to his wife through that. I thought that was great. That was such a, really spoke about who he was. I mean, that he was, a really a good guy who really, really loved his wife. And as you said earlier, they perhaps have taken certain liberties with who the real guy, but it doesn't matter because this is a movie and we're talking about that story. But that's just an unforgettable moment for me. I just thought that was just, the brilliant writing on the, to have him say that instead of saying something about him.
Yeah.
I just think that was so great. Some comments here. I think you were touching on this already, Joel, but George W. Starts is wondering what you guys think of the religious content of The Wrong Man. It's been said that The Wrong Man has more overt religious content than any other Hitchcock film except I Confess. What do you think, Joel? I know we touched on that already.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like, Manny is a sort of, stand-in or avatar for, a Christ figure.
Yeah.
And even things like, the process that he goes through, leading up to his arrest and leading up to his confinement in jail is, can be interpreted as the Stations of the Cross, going through the Stations of the Cross in the Catholic Church where, I forget what they are now, but, bearing his cross up to Golgotha, the impalement, and so forth. And the tone and mood of it is, I feel at times like I'm watching a Ruwalt painting brought to life. And Hitch was a big fan of Ruwalt, George Ruwalt, and he was a Catholic expressionist painter, and so he painted, dozens, hundreds of pictures of Jesus on the cross, along with lots of clowns and lots of prostitutes. Those are like his three.
Quite the combination.
Yeah, right. And the prostitutes were sort of a Mary Magdalene, kind of a saved prostitute kind of thing. And
right.
but his work was like deeply, deeply Christian. And the painting, it's spelled Rouault, if anybody wants to look it up. And the modeling of these faces, and they're mostly medium shots of people, a lot anyway, are like deeply grounded in shadows, and the lighting in these paintings is very much like the lighting in The Wrong Man, and that they have the same kind of aspect to them of like the light and shadow is almost, speaks to a sense of, being in touch with not only the nuances of light, but the nuances of darkness, which is something that we tend to push away, especially Christianity tends to push away the darkness. But this kind of invites that darkness in and kind of owns it and says, well, this is half of our experience. The more we disown it, the more we hurt ourselves.
Right.
Kind of the message too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny. I never put the Christ like, that's true. I mean, if you look at the story of Christ, it actually certainly mirrors the story of Manny. I mean, I certainly saw the religious aspects of the character in the praying, but yeah, you're right. That's a good point. It is quite Christ-like. There's Anna R. She's from someone from Mexico is what. Hello from Mexico. I actually rewatched The Wrong Man last weekend after so many years, and I was a bit surprised. It's a really grim film compared to other Hitchcock films. Yeah, it is. He wasn't too crazy about this one. Am I right, Joel? And just from reading Hitchcock Truffaut.
Oh, well, I think that, comes with a grain of salt because it didn't do so well at the box office. And
yeah,
so
that really influenced him, didn't it?
Well, it influenced him publicly.
Yeah.
Vertigo flopped too. And so he disowned it. But I forget who was a writer sat down with him to talk and said, I think Vertigo is the best film you've ever made, and maybe one of the best films ever made. And he wept. He just burst into tears because he finally met someone who got his film. And so
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that he felt that way. I love Vertigo as well. We reviewed that. My former co-host and I reviewed that last year because I think that's perhaps one of his most complex films psychologically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just a phenomenal film. Any other last thoughts on The Wrong Man, Joel?
Well, it's funny. I don't know if you had this in mind, but there's a very specific crossover between The Man Who Knew Too Much and The Wrong Man. And that specific crossover is in the assassination scene. All the people gather around the bullet hole in the window, and you see these fingers. If I can get over here, these fingers pointing.
Oh yeah.
From all these different directions, and it's a very striking scene, and it's completely unnecessary, but it just kind of like it's just one of these bravura moments that just drives something home for you. And that same image was used in a promotional poster for The Wrong Man, and you've got Henry Fonda in the middle of the scene, and all the fingers pointing.
Oh, right. I love that picture. Yeah, I know the picture you're talking about. Do you think was that a conscious choice, or do you think people have just picked up on that years later?
It had to have been conscious.
Yeah,
he reused his ideas all the time, and each time he did it, they got a little bit better. Like he had a bug in his bonnet or a bee in his bonnet, and he just had to redo these things until he like really
cracked it.
Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
cracked that idea.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. No, I didn't know that, but I love that photo. I know exactly the one you're talking about. Another thing that I forgot to mention about the man who knew too much was, as I'm sure you know, he talked about it in Hitchcock Truffaut, was that apparently the police never carried guns at that time. So they was it the censor board? I'm not sure who insisted that they have something where people are giving them guns, or and he just thought that was so stupid.
Yeah, that scene was a sort of a reenactment or a re-envisioning of a riot that had happened about 20 years earlier.
Right.
And so the cops didn't have guns. They didn't want to do this, and so so for that riot, they brought in the army actually to put them down with firearms. They couldn't do that with this. So he had them go to a gun shop, and the gunsmith, handed out his rifles to them, and that was kind of their workaround.
Yeah, just trying to find a quick way to not tell the public that to make sure the public knows that they don't have guns. Like,
Right.
Well, Joel, this has been great. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I've learned a lot. I mean, there's so much in these films. There's so many books for anyone interested. We've done quite a few Hitchcock films, so you can go check them out on my YouTube channel. And please also subscribe if you haven't already done so. Right beside the description box below, you'll see the subscribe button. Just press that and then click the bell beside it in order to get a notification every time I release a new video or I go live. And you can find Joel at Joel Gunz, GUNZ.com. I'll put the link in the description box below. And again, the Hitchcock Conference is October 1st to the 3rd in Cape Cod. HitchCon.org to get all the details. I'll put that in the description box below as well. And you're on Twitter and Instagram as well. It's at Joel Gunz, right, for Twitter?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And Instagram is Alfred Hitchcock Geek, I believe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At Alfred Hitchcock Geek, so you can connect with Joel there. I'll also have that in the description box below as well. And for those of you who drop comments and questions in the comment box, thank you so much. Really appreciate some of those bits of trivia that I didn't know, or some of your questions. Joel, thanks again. This has been a real pleasure.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you in October. You're going to be talking about Under Capricorn, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, Under Capricorn, which I think is a really phenomenal film that I think a lot of people perhaps hadn't heard of or wouldn't even think it was Hitchcock, but it's a really great film from the mid-40s that I'm looking forward to diving into and getting ready to present.
I'm looking forward to hearing about that. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, we'll be in touch for sure. I'd love to have you back sometime to talk more Hitchcock, because I do a lot of Hitchcock films here. So great. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much, and we'll see everyone soon.